There are organizations out there that are leveraging Salesforce in powerful ways to serve their customers. Trailside Talk is here to shine a light on their successes and their stories.
I'm your host, Hannah Thompson. Join me on the trail to CRM success as we dig into some real-life, high-impact journeys, from challenges to triumphs and everything in between. Let's explore this story together. Welcome to Trailside Talk. I am joined today by Mike Griego, president and founder of MXL Partners, which is a California-based sales effectiveness consulting and training firm. And we at WhiteRock have had the pleasure of getting to partner with Mike and work closely with MXL Partners. Mike, we know you have a really neat story, so thanks for being here today. Really excited to dig in with you.
Yeah, Hannah, great to be here. Thanks for having me, and look forward to our conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. To start us off, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yeah, sure. I'm out here in Northern California. I hail from Southern California, so I spent California all my life, but I've traveled the world in my career, really focused on sales. As I mentioned, I grew up in Southern Cal. My parents were very blue collar. I didn't have any kind of business model. My dad was a produce clerk in a grocery store, and my mom painted dishes in a factory. But I was a good enough student and kind of athlete to get into a good school. So it was an Occidental College in Los Angeles that my sophomore year, I got my sales chops. And what happened there was I ended up looking for a summer job, or I got recruited for a summer job with a company in Tennessee that hired naive college kids to sell books door to door. In a program, about 6,000 kids would sign up, and my parents thought I was crazy, but it looked like I could make more money than being a bag boy in a grocery store where my dad worked. But I did it, and I ended up doing it for 3 summers, and I thought it was just a silly job, but it turned out to be something pivotal in my life because it helped me learn mental toughness and discipline and rigor, and learn really rudimentary sales. But Hannah, by the time I was 22, I realized I'd talked to 10,000 Mrs. Joneses out there in the countryside of one summer in Western Pennsylvania, and a couple summers in Eastern Ohio. And that experience helped me get into grad school, Stanford Business School. I got married. My wife and I moved up to the Bay Area, and we've been here ever since, and raised our family in Mountain View, California. And along the way, I learned you could do sales in an air-conditioned office. I worked for IBM and a bunch of high-tech companies, and have been VP of sales, and did that for about 18 years. And then the last 20 plus years I've been doing this, which essentially founded MXL, and leveraging all that sales and management experience to help companies. So now I go around and coach and counsel and clarify sales process and messaging, and build playbooks and coach teams how to be more effective in their structure and their go-to-market plans.
That's fantastic. So can you speak a little bit more to the origin of MXL Partners itself?
Sure. I never really wanted to launch my own business. I was happy working for good companies, and being in the Silicon Valley, I was with a high flyer, the VP of sales for a high flyer company during the go-go days, and we had gone from 0 to a few million, and then quadruple that, and we were on our way to a big success story when the dot-com bubble hit. And that's where got shocked, and suddenly, like a lot of people, the whole thing had kind of wind down. We were just about ready to sell the company for a huge multiple, and it just blew up. And that was a point where it's like, wow, I had 3 kids that were coming up, almost ready to. First one was going off to college, and 2 more after that, and so it was kind of a scary time. But I really felt kind of a strong nudge to launch my own business, and I didn't want to do that. My wife was scared, but I realized all the business around me were struggling. So I figured, why not struggle to sell my own self? So I came up with a name, MXL Partners, and it was primarily just me. But I went around, contacted a lot of my, business friends, VC friends, and next thing I knew, people needed help in sales, and I became a consultant. and advising people. And I started then figuring out how I can package and productize what I do. So started doing that, and I've been doing it ever since. And over the years, learned to kind of really clarify and productize what I do. And now work with particularly a lot of private equity firms last, 5 to 8 years in working with their portfolio companies and helping them get their sales act together.
And that led you to our mutual partner, Align Capital Partners, right? Could you speak a little bit to how you got into that high value role with them?
Sure. I managing director there, Dave Tiley, was a good friend back in the day when I was in Silicon Valley, and I knew Dave when he was at HP. Interesting story. He actually lived when he was in post-college with my brother. My brother was working at Apple at that time. So, but then I got to know Dave, good guy, and got to know each other. And then he ended up moving back to Cleveland. But he called me one day after I'm now in with MXL multi-years later, and he says, "Mike, what is it you do again?" And so I told him I help companies on the sales side. He goes, "Well, I'm partner over here at Riverside, the Riverside company, and we may need you." So that's got me launched into working with private equity companies. And I worked with Dave's portfolio and got introduced a lot of other operating partners and did a lot of stuff with that firm. And then Dave left there and ended up at Align Capital Partners. And then he wanted to replicate that. So that's what we did. I've been doing this for multiple years, working closely with that team, and that really got me more in the industrial space. A lot of companies outside of the high-tech companies I traditionally have worked with. And it was along the lines, I had come to know Mike McGivney at WhiteRock, and I started seeing that, Mike and I kind of had a tag team thing where whenever I run into somebody that needed CRM help or any kind of Salesforce instance or some kind of struggle launching or, implementing a good process in their CRM system, I would refer people to Mike. And then when Dave Tiley at ACP asked me if I knew anybody that, knew Salesforce, and I said, absolutely. So I introduced WhiteRock to Align Capital Partners, and that launched that relationship. So now they literally call us the Mike and Mike show. So Mike Griego and Mike McGivney will do a tag team where if you think about it, there's a lot of synergies with getting clarity on the sales process and what you're doing in terms of a sales organization structure and how they engage. And then once you lock that down, get it into the system so you can institutionalize the practice in a good instance of Salesforce. And, people at WhiteRock, as you guys know everything. You guys know you're comfortable with people that come from NetSuite or from HubSpot or Salesforce, and you guys have the goods to kind of implement all things from just a setup to all the way to a really deep ERP implementation, connectivity, and or build special apps. You guys are all over that. So you're a trusted partner for me and now for Align Capital.
Absolutely. I love the Mike and Mike show. That's awesome to hear the background there.
Yeah, Mike McGivney, we talk every week, and it's just and not just about business. We've become good friends, and he's a good guy.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really neat relationship that you guys have there. That's awesome. You found a very niche role in your business, your value proposition, your delivery to your customers. How would you describe the evolution of this to its current state?
Well, I would say, and it's interesting in sales, and it's been an evolution of me kind of understanding the sales world and what the need is out there, and it's helped me kind of in my consulting and practice. It's interesting being in the Silicon Valley and being what I would call a pure play sales guy, where I've done everything from basic door-to-door sales all the way to sophisticated, big mega deals with large, sophisticated, complex enterprise software and infrastructure and all kinds of stuff. So I've done it all. I've seen it all. I've managed it all. And I kind of get it. So it seems natural, but it's not, because I've just kind of studied. I was actually an English literature major in college. So it was not technical, but I learned how to engage on the sales side. So, but what I found in Silicon Valley is, and particularly once I started MXL and getting into the sales consulting realm and training, a lot of people have a misconception about sales, and I still find this, where they think it's just about banging on doors, or they think it's you got to be persuasive or or big personality, and it's actually not that. It's actually a process. There's a structure. There's a flow. Some of the best salespeople are very understated, so it's not about a personality thing. It's about being smart about the problems and asking questions and talking to people and engaging and guiding conversations to uncover issues that, if you think about it, you can preset on what some of those issues are, and talk about that and drive them out. And of course, what solutions you have. So once people kind of see that, then they go, wow, this sales thing is that it's actually not about being a used car salesman, which is where everyone typically goes. And it's actually a sophisticated arena that, when you find and you look at enterprise and companies, some of the smartest people are doing mega deals, and they're doing it because they know how to drive people, they know how to articulate things, they know how to bring together teams, and so there's a lot to it. So I've seen, and I have to help people and organizations, particularly even a new generation these days, who never got trained on this stuff, understand how to drive and build organizations that are sales oriented in a way that has good firm structure through your systems, all the way through the practices you do every day in driving a team. So it's not rocket science, but there's some complexity to it that there's certainly a lot of variables and room for missteps that people take, and I just help them stay on the right path.
That's awesome. Very, very well said too. Thank you for sharing. In addition to your impactful work that you're doing at MXL, your longtime ministry initiative, Biblical Viewpoint, has left an impact on our team, no doubt countless others. So I'd be remiss not to ask you about it as well. Could you share a little bit about the origin of Biblical Viewpoint?
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of people don't know that part or that side of me, and I keep distinct lanes in my personal life with the business life. However, it's all intertwined, as you know. I've been a Christian for most of my life, and I've seen kind of an evolution of my growth there. I've always been inquisitive. I've always been a reader and a studier of apologetics, or things that support why things are, and what's truth and what's not. And so it's interesting, kind of back at one of my first customers at IBM, where I'm cranking away with the customers. I saw, my wife and I were going to a church in the Bay Area, and one Sunday I saw his name in the bulletin. And I'm thinking, that's Max Rondone. What's he doing? And I didn't even know he was going to church, but it's him and his wife were teaching a class. And I thought, whoa. And I nudged my wife. I said, I'm going to call. I may go to this class. So I called him on Monday, and I talked to Max, and I said, Max, my good customer, we've always just done business. We never know anything else. But I asked him, I said, do you go to this church in Menlo Park? And he goes, yeah. And I said, Max, I signed up for your class. I'm going to join your class. And it was on God's covenant, covering Old and New Testament. So it was a pretty heady thing. And he goes, great. So that started, and here I'm probably in my mid 30s at that point, but started a relationship with Max and his wife. And it was really interesting to see a guy who became a mentor to me of the blending of business prowess with a good faith and a solid, good family man. And so it really kind of started and helped me understand. And I ended up taking their classes for 5 years. So I learned a lot, and I always had a knack for teaching. And then they passed the baton to me, and I ended up teaching classes for 5 years. And then after that, I started developing. For 5 years, I taught my own stuff. I started developing curriculum to teach what I call the I Believe series, which was kind of dealing with all kinds of questions people have about the Christian faith. And I'd get 80, 100 people to these classes every week that I was teaching. So while I'm also still running a business, and I'm coaching my kids' football teams, soccer teams, baseball teams, and and building MXL. So I had a pretty complex life, but it was fun. And then that evolved to where it was about 10 or 11, 12 years ago. I always had a sense of maybe I should write some stuff down. And in the era of blogs and things like that, I started prayed about it and suddenly felt a real strong conviction that I should launch a blog site. So this biblical viewpoint, and if you look at biblicalviewpoint.com, I wrote a few, kind of like a Oswald Chambers type of model of a short, pithy, but they're about 1,000 words on topics that make sense to people. And I try not to be too preachy, but just to try to help people learn. And I end up writing about a lot of things, whether business or marketplace or family or being a man, being married and fathering and all kinds of things, or some parts of the Bible to help people understand it. Really meant for all people, whether people are strong into it or not. It's approachable. But I put out a few in the month of December, and son-in-law built a website, and then I thought, okay, sent it out to 10 friends. Nobody threw up on it. So I thought, okay, that's my research. I'm going to do it. And January of 2013, I put out the first batch to a bunch of people. Now it's grown. I think there's over 100,000 views I'll get this year to people all around the world seeing this thing on all different topics. And I've been writing it weekly. So on Friday afternoons, I write these things and then I put them out. So it's a gift, and I don't take it lightly. And it's just part of who I am and what I do, in addition to doing the MXL thing and helping people. But in a sense, I feel I've been gifted to be a coach and a teacher on the business stuff and the sales stuff, as well as on things of, I think, a big consequence around faith and understanding of how the world works.
That's really, really neat. And we have a lot of respect for your initiatives in both directions. So I hope I didn't put you on the spot, but just thank you for sharing a little bit more.
No, it's appreciate the ask. No, it's great.
Awesome. Can I ask one more question on it?
Sure.
Awesome. So how has Biblical Viewpoint, how has this side of things changed you over time? What has it done for your family and your network as it relates to callings of Christians in general?
Yeah. Well, I think I've matured over time, and I think, as a man, or a married man, and as a business person, as Christians, there's a maturity cycle that we kind of roll through, and I've seen that, and what I've learned is, I think God has a lot of patience with us, and I think there is a path for growth and development. And if you look at some of the major heroes in the Bible, there's a lot of growth that people go through. So in a sense, I certainly, have gone through that, but it's helped me also, I think, to have kind of more of a heart and compassion for customers and what people go through, because in a sense, what people are just trying to do their lives, they're trying to just to make a buck and be successful, and I try to help them. I certainly don't like I said, preach to people at all, but I do help them kind of operate with integrity in their space and what they're doing, and help them kind of be the best that they're gifted to be. So I'm really big on kind of mentoring, coaching people. I can see young sales VPs and sales leaders, or young sales people who want to enter in the field and grow and develop. And in a sense, I see them like, the way I coach my own kids. And so in a sense, there's been this path of my personal life as well as business life. And, I got 3 kids. They're all married young, like my wife and I. They all had strong marriages, strong Christian marriages, and they all cranked out a bunch of kids. So my wife and I married 45 years this year. And we was thinking we're old enough to have 10 grandkids that are between the ages of 6 and 15. And so in a sense, and now some of the older ones, the one's 15, she's now reading the Biblical Viewpoint. So she gets a different perspective, like, wow, Grandpa, who knew, that kind of thing. And she's learning stuff. So I see there's an opportunity for these kids, and they're understanding how their parents were raised. So in a sense, we're building up a bunch of kids. Plus, I was telling Mike McGibbity last week, a big weekend, we had our championship soccer game. I'm coaching under 12 girls soccer for one of my grandkids, and over the years I've been coaching these little kids, and so we had a great season. So I see a lot of, I think part of life is figuring out what you're good at, what you're gifted at, and for me, I think I figured out a long time ago. I teach and coach and I motivate, and in a sense, so as long as I kind of pray for God to continue to put me in places where I can do that and impact people's lives, then it's a good thing. And I do it, and it's kind of your wheelhouse. And I think all of us have a wheelhouse in a sense, and we got to find that. And if you can find that and operate in that, it's a wonderful way to go.
That's awesome. That's really special to have that coaching gift, being able to apply that to like all the different areas of your life. That's really neat. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah. I figured it out over the years. Like I said, it doesn't. I wish I knew this when I was 14 years old. But it's like, you're just so naive. You're just learning. But if you open your eyes, it's amazing what can come out of stuff.
That's awesome. Kind of getting back into the partnership side of things, I'd love to ask you, how would you describe the value that MXL and WhiteRock delivered to the mutual customers that we work with?
Yeah, it really is fascinating, and it's good to find people that are trustworthy and good, and want to do the right thing for the customers, because there's lots of opportunity to take advantage of situations and people, and just just kind of move on. I think what I've seen with WhiteRock, even more so than on the MXL side, that there's a lot of complexity, of course, to setting up a good implementation of a CRM, like whether it's Salesforce or any other instance. And it's attention to detail. You got to be really engineering oriented. You got to get it. You got to have the right team. And what I've seen the WhiteRock team, they're sharp. They're good. They got high integrity, and they want to get it done right. And so it's a very similar process on the sales side they use. So Mike and I could talk about this. So in a sense, there's this assessment phase. So, WhiteRock has productized that, and just like I productized it in terms of the first few weeks in a sales project, I could assess, interview, talk to people, get a lay of the land, of what's really going on from dynamics, and no judgment, but let's see what's cooking, how it's being done, what's happening. Mike does the same thing on the WhiteRock side. And so when we work together with a company, we'll have two parallel paths of, hey, on one side, we're doing an assessment of the people, of the structure of how things should be done from a process and messaging, engagement, the priorities of accounts, how that all is being addressed. At the same time, Mike is looking at all the infrastructure and what they're doing from an IT stack, tech stack. And so two projects can go on at the same time, and then working together, we can kind of compare notes, because ideally, and here's where I think the beauty is of the partnership. If you can lock down all the right pieces to building and documenting a good, let's say, a playbook or a toolkit that lays out what people are supposed to do, and the structure's right, and we're coaching and counseling on the sales side, the way to really institutionalize it is to then implement this in the system and to put it in the CRM system, so that at the point of attack, whether it's an opportunity screen of an account or an active opportunity, a rep can be guided or recalled, whether they're an A player or a new person coming on board. If you can lock in all of that right there at that CRM screen, that's where you want to be. And that's what WhiteRock's been able to do, in a sense, kind of take the MXL kind of playbook, if you will, and implement it in Salesforce. So it's a beautiful thing now, and I really believe over the next several years, more and more companies will start to connect those dots, because, having done this for a couple decades, when I started MXL, very few companies, there's probably 1/3, maybe 25% to 1/3 of companies were actually disciplined enough to implement a sales process and clarify that 2/3 of companies have not. That number now today hasn't approached 50% yet. It's certainly gotten better, but there's still a lot of companies that pay lip service to sales process, and they have to in the CRM maybe put some stuff, but they don't have the rigor and discipline to drive it across their organization. That's what the MXL thing does for people. But then to really take this to town is what WhiteRock has created, with taking that kind of discipline and rigor and putting it in the CRM. So it's not just moving stage to stage, but it's also driving that instructional guide tool so that a rep could understand it, whether it's not going to insult the intelligence of a very sophisticated enterprise rep. They'll still be able to get value out of saying, okay, that's a good reminder. Oh yeah, I got to do that. And you end up with a flow that is really buttoned up. And I'll tell you, there's lots of room. Lots of companies need that kind of stuff. And Mike and I have kind of figured out how to do that in phases, so you don't overwhelm people, but you do it and you build on it. And if I, like involve a lot of private equity companies now, it's about building that flow over, even if we want to turn a company, let's over the next 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, let's move in that direction. And then we'll have a pretty buttoned up, engine and machine that very sellable to other companies, or certainly can scale at that point. But that's a very different world that I've seen than when I started MXL, which was a lot of, hand waving and talking to people and motivating them. It's a lot more sophisticated, but in a sense, it's now taking all that and institutionalizing it. Very still human element to it.
Yeah, definitely bringing those pieces together for sure. That's awesome. Thank you. How would you describe the work that you do with WhiteRock as it relates to the communication and the accountability between us serving customers?
I think the key, and this is the key on my business when I work with companies, is to get into a regular cadence of communication. And it's been interesting. Back in the day, it used to be go out and visit people, have a 1 hour meeting, as a sales guy. And then I saw it evolve to, you can do stuff down the phone, and then evolved into the half-hour meeting. And then it could evolve into the, the Zoom and the Teams meeting now online, with COVID, that really kind of, we're never going to go back. But there's lots of ways now, or even with Google Meet, there's lots of ways to talk to people and communicate in small chunks. And people have short attention spans, so I do a lot of half-hour meetings with people that are regular cadence. It makes sense either whether it's weekly or by every other week. But it is a way, and Mike and I have been able to do this. So we'll just kind of go through our laundry list, and it builds a relationship at the same time, because we're talking about family and friends and Arkansas football, but I'll bring up my Trojan USC football, but my Dodgers, and I know he doesn't like them, but if we won. But so you build personal relationship at the same time. Have a general list that we're talking through on different things and what needs what, and also kind of advising, counseling each other, encouraging each other.
That's awesome. A good way to keep in touch for sure. Is there a high point in your mind when you knew that our work together was beginning to change our mutual customers?
I think through the ebb and flow of some businesses, I think there's one particular account, I think was the first one that I gave to Mike, and he was excited to get the referral and the introduction to Aligned Capital Partners, and but then, good news, bad news, it turned into just a big problem child for WhiteRock, and there was a lot of complexity and a lot of issues with that account in terms of how they were structured and all the stuff they had to undo to get the right implementation done. And I could see how, wow, Mike and WhiteRock really have to sort through a lot of stuff to get it done. But you know what? They do, and they weathered through it. And that company, after several years, with Mike working all the way through them and helping them on the IT tech stack, that became a very successful flip and sell for after several years for WhiteRock. And so it showed me that, if you're patient and you kind of ride with people and work with them, through the ups and downs, you can have a successful outcome. It's not easy, and this business, this kind of stuff we do it's not easy, but it's just like anything people do. It takes work, it takes patience. You got to work through human issues as well as tech issues and stuff, and so it helped me see the sensitivity by which WhiteRock works with people, and the same way I try to work with people. And you got to work through ups and downs of issues and people changes and all that, and dynamics, cultural shifts. But I think that was the beginning of an eye-opener to see the quality that WhiteRock brings to how they take care of customers. They don't hit and run. And along the way, there's other examples of companies where they've had to weather difficult situations and challenges, but they still carry the ball and move forward. It's been impressive.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. How has the partnership contributed? And this is kind of a similar question, so do with this what you will, but how has the partnership contributed to the growth and the development of the companies that you've worked with?
Well, I do see with some companies in the private equity world, you got some companies that are high growth. Otherwise, they wouldn't get the attention of the equity firms. They're high growth. They got some competence. They're doing good things. But often it's operator, and they've gotten to a point, they built some teams up and they're rolling. Maybe they've got a, base level CRM implementation, or maybe things are pretty good. But what happens with the equity guys, they want to come in and want to scale it and make it even bigger. So that brings a whole nother layer, whether they're snapping on new companies. And so therefore the business has to be reset. So with that comes some challenge. And so in watching kind of Mike do their thing, and I could see the parallel with what I do, that these things don't happen overnight. That sometimes it's not just do this coaching playbook training and work with, coach and managers and all that. You get some impact within a couple of quarters, but often it's in the second year that you start to see everything start to shift, and you have a cultural shift. And likewise with the IT side, you see implementation shift and a movement toward real optimization and excellence is where things really start to shift. So I've seen that with WhiteRock, that it's not an overnight fix. It takes time. But now some of the companies that I've seen Mike work with and WhiteRock for more than 1 year, really, you kind of work through all these issues. And that's what I'm saying. They're really rebuilding and helping these companies move to new levels. And it does it's an impressive shift. And their companies are better. They are operating in a more streamlined way. There's more efficiency. And then you overlay that with good sales effectiveness, you end up with a better company.
Kind of digging in a little bit more to that, how do you measure, from your perspective, how do you measure the success of WhiteRock's solutions in these companies?
Well, I think because WhiteRock knows what I call the granddaddy of them all, Salesforce.com, because your focus is on Salesforce and you know it well, and you've been involved in everything, very, very large instances all the way down to the smaller ones. And you have the goods to work with very technical, rich and complex integrations that because you have that prowess and knowledge and the team is that good, you can face anything. So it's shown me that, and I've seen along the way before I met WhiteRock, there's a lot of maybe bigger companies that were more institutionalized, but they were more like cookie cutters, and they didn't have the depth that I saw that WhiteRock has. And then I've seen a lot of fly-by-night type people who just put on a hat and say they're tech for Salesforce instances, and they're not dependable, because you get yourself in trouble if you do this stuff wrong. And so then I've seen WhiteRock, which has built the business in a way that's like like I said, with high integrity to do it right. And like it's not easy, and building a team and makes a good coach, a good leader, a good man, and he's building a good organization. So in that sense, with the prowess and the commitment and the leadership, you end up with a powerful solution that has the goods to address anything. And so that's why I just think from a partnership standpoint, it's really fun to find a guy like and a team like WhiteRock to work with, because that's what building over here.
Absolutely. You mentioned the Salesforce, some of the different types of partners that are out there. What advice would you give to an organization that's looking for a Salesforce partner like WhiteRock?
Definitely take a look at this, and of course, CRMs are everyone's got an opinion on these things, and people have a heritage with with other types of slick little app solutions that are out there, and little things that may bolt down to Salesforce or things like a HubSpot or NetSuite. And what I've seen is, I would challenge anybody, like, hey, wherever you're at, that's fine. You want something, but you got to think of the scalability of it. And I watch Mike and WhiteRock team kind of work with all kinds of comers, any kind of environment. And I think if I was a company with a high growth team or growing in some way, and I came across the need for, hey, we got to look at CRM, and I got referred to WhiteRock, I would be looking, and I think WhiteRock does this, is, hey, my ask to them would be, hey, can you give me an idea of kind of a small, medium, large way to engage? Can you kind of look under the hoods here and tell me what I got, given this thing I built, my company, but can you help me and give me an assessment of whether this has the legs to grow or what I need to do? And you may recommend Salesforce, but here I've been over here doing this thing with this little product or something, but give me an assessment. That's not going to break the bank to have you just kind of give your expertise and view of it. And WhiteRock has that kind of small, medium, large type of assessment. So when I work with companies and I say, hey, by the way, I've got a partner firm that when it comes to your IT tech stack and your CRM implementation, they could work with anything, but for, small, medium, large type of just look under the hood type of service, they can give you an assessment of what it takes, what you have, and give you kind of an idea of what you're looking at and what could grow. And you may want to hire them, whether you need them to just, be a help desk for you, or whether you have some special things you want to throw at them. They could do it all. So my advice is, that's how you want to, that's the kind of firm you want to work with. That's somebody that has easy entrance in, and then it gives you a frank assessment of what you got to deal with. And then you could decide whether you want to invest money or what you want to do, or even kind of just go along a little bit for a while, but and build further trust in how these people really could work with you. And that's what I think WhiteRock has done pretty well. And I see them, and they got different kind of ways to work with people at any level.
Thank you. That's a really good perspective on that. I appreciate you sharing. What advice would you give to someone in pursuit of a career path similar to yours?
Actually, it's interesting. I've written a couple books, and they're both lend themselves to that type, because I have it in mind, like, boy, I wish I had a book like this when I was coming out of college. And the first book I wrote was 42 Rules to Increase Sales Effectiveness. And the publisher had a template for 42 rules, and that was what they wanted. They'd have one. Somebody wrote one on marketing, wanted me to write one on sales. So it was really cool to do it, and I was able to kind of think through all elements. But I thought through, what is somebody who wants to get into sales? What could they get that would be helpful? Also for people who maybe they are on a board and they need to understand sales, because I find a lot of senior people don't fully understand sales. Or you're a sophisticated VP of sales or a CEO or a director of sales, and you know what you're doing, but here's a guidance for how to do it even better. So that's what that first book was, and it's a quick read. And So I would advise somebody to read a book like that, or the next book I wrote, which came out a couple years ago, called No Excuses, A Better Way to Sell. And it really incorporates all these, 20 plus years of experience in addition to my own sales experience, but really the consulting side and taking everything and breaking it down into chapters. So in a sense, all the things I do now, it's all kind of in the book, and people can kind of see it on qualification, on discovery, and how to set up territories, how to do this and that for their own individual sake or for sake of their companies or teams. But it's also good guidance for someone who wants to think about sales, because there's a mind shift thing going on too, because most people misunderstand sales. So I tell some of my personal background and story of how, light went on in my head about how to do good sales, because I was always a top producer. And I learned why are people top producers? Why are some not top producers? So I started, so there's ideas and things around there. So I would encourage somebody to not be misguided about what they might have heard about sales, but certainly it's a tremendous opportunity for people to learn about business and learn life skills and a lot of things. Like I mentioned, my two sons are in sales. They're both tremendous producers in the businesses they're in, and they are just happy. I did not push them into sales. They did it on their own, but of course they've been around it. And they said one of the great things was that sales was not a bad word in our house. So they had no problem in going and getting early and, coming out of college and in their summer jobs, getting exposed to some things that got them on their way. So they got a tremendous head start in what they're doing, and it's really paid well. And then what's interesting, they say a lot of their peer friends took about 10 years later where they're suddenly saying, hey, maybe I should go into sales, because they've seen them be so successful. But they always thought sales was about being a used car salesman, or somebody had to be big personalities. And they wish they would have gotten that memo earlier. So I would encourage, and I see great trends with some of the universities and campuses having more of sales programs, where they're teaching people, how to be exposed to sales and what sales is all about at a kind of a business level at the university level. See more and more kids getting exposed to that stuff, and that's tremendous. So I would encourage people to study this stuff in school, get yourself a good job with a good company, get an internship, follow around good salespeople, talk to people, and you'll find you can have a tremendous start in sales and get rolling. And you can do a lot of things with that too. A lot of people who are CEOs of companies that have a good sales background, they really gives them good grounding.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. That's really good advice. What are some of your biggest accomplishments over the past year?
At this point, I take a lot of pride in seeing, my children and what they're able to produce, and seeing it in the next generation with the kids. So spending a lot of time with the grandkids and seeing them, and my wife and I do a lot of babysitting, and we do a lot of traveling around to see the kids. I mean, 7 of the 10 are within 5 minutes of us here. It's pretty cool. My daughter in San Diego, we got to go down and see them, or they'll come up. But coaching, counseling the kids, and seeing that next generation is a real source of pride and joy. I think really taking my business to new levels in terms of where this goes, and I'm in conversations, discussions with people that we're even taking this even to higher levels in terms of what we can do as a business, and it involves kind of building and mentoring and expanding the footprint of what I do on the MXL side. So I think getting it to that level where I end up continuing to do what I love to do, which is coach and counsel and mentor, and really institutionalize good practices for people, so that could be expanded. We can build real value that way. So those are fun things, and doing well with our under 12 girls soccer team was a real big accomplishment too, and so happy with that one.
That's awesome. Lots to celebrate across the board for sure. Before we get into our closing questions here, is there anything else that you'd like to share today, Mike?
No, I just appreciate the chance to chat, and Hannah, I really appreciate you over there at WhiteRock. I think you've been a big plus for Mike and the team, and what you bring from your skill set, and really helping the company. And I've watched how you've had a big impact in it. So I want to commend you on the good work you're doing there for WhiteRock.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. Closing questions here. First, do you have a favorite book or resource for success that you would recommend to those tuning in?
Good question. Yeah, of course, I could throw out my books, The 42 Rules to Increase Sales Effectiveness, or No Excuses book. Those are tremendous resources for sales, anybody on the sales side. So you can get those on Amazon. Apart from that, I think I had an impact in that summer job program I got stumbled upon when I was a sophomore in college. When you rolled back there to Tennessee at the beginning of the training for a week, we're all scared to death, but 6,000 kids converge, and they train you for a week, and then they send you off to one county all summer with 3 other roommates, all commission. But one of the things they did us on the training is they gave us a set of 3 books that first summer. They did it each summer, and some of those books are staples, some they tweaked a little bit. But my first summer, I got handed a book, Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. At this point, it's a dated book, but it was just so rich and good. And I think it still has legs today. But you want to talk about a classic. So that book taught me some of the rigors of how to have a firm handshake and how to just do the things that most people my generation were taught back in the day. When my youngest son was 14, he was working at a job as a water boy in a restaurant at age 14. But I think he got in trouble for something. But one of the things I did, I said, it was a punishment, but I said, I'm going to pay you $50, but here's what you got to do as a result of this, whatever he did wrong. But I said, I want you to read this book and then report back to me what you find as you read it. See if you learn something. So the book was How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. And I remember he looked at the book and go, oh man, Dad, it's so thick. I said, Jace, read the book and let's talk about it. So he started reading it, and then he came to me a few weeks later and he said, hey, Dad, that book works. I said, what are you talking about? What are you saying? He goes, it works. I said, what do you mean? He goes, I was at the restaurant. He's a little water boy. He goes, I was talking to a man, and I looked him in the eye, and we were talking. I gave him a firm handshake, and this man looked at me like, thank you, young man. He said, I think, I can see how this stuff works. He goes, what else you got after I'm done with this one? I started feeding him more and more books. I think I cut him off after I hit about $300 and paying him $50 a book or something. But it was really fascinating because I think there's an opportunity to get good books and read that stuff and help people. But that was one of them. And I'll just mention 2 others. One that I also got at Southwestern was The Magic of Thinking Big by a guy named Dr. David Schwartz. I just had a customer ask me for a book. I told him that one. He came back to me and said, man, that book is awesome. That was really great. So Magic of Thinking Big by Dr. David Schwartz, just my perspective on stuff. And the last one was by Og Mandino. He just died a few years ago, but Og Mandino wrote a lot of different motivational books. He was also a strong Christian guy. But he wrote a book called The Greatest Salesman in the World. So it was a great little sales book with a great story to it that I read as a dumb, naive 19-year-old. And because they told us at the end of the summer, read just 15 minutes a day, you'll get through all these books. And my roommates thought it was stupid. I did it. And of course, I've been reading books like that all my life now. And it really makes a difference. Get your head right, motivated, and grounded. So anyway, those are some ideas for people.
Those are good ones. Thank you so much. Where can those tuning in get in touch with you if they'd like to contact you?
Well, the site is MXL Partners.com. So, and there's stuff there's contact page, or you can send direct email to me at mike@mxlpartners.com. Happy to chat with people and reach me that way. And like phone numbers on the website as well.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for sharing. Well, that's all I've got for us today. So, Mike, it's always a pleasure. We are very thankful and blessed to know you, blessed to work with you. Have a lot of respect for you around here, and are just inspired by all that you do. So, thanks so much for coming on today and sharing your story with us.
Well, thanks, Anna. I really appreciate it, and look forward to continue working with you and Mike and the team there at WhiteRock.
Likewise, appreciate you, Mike.
Well, that concludes another exciting episode of Trailside Talk. Thanks for joining, and see you on the next trail.